From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
As Providence's economy continues to erode, the analogies have gotten more frightening. From a Category 5 hurricane to...
We are on the edge and staring into a black hole.
At his State of the City and press conferences, Mayor Taveras warns the city is on the brink of bankruptcy. Critics say the mayor is using scare tactics to wring concessions from pensioners and nonprofit institutions. But the mayor says numbers don't lie.
My administration and your internal auditor agree that the city will be out of cash by the end of June and unable to meet payroll.
Are the dire warnings being heard, or is the capital city inching closer to that black hole? Our guest this week on Newsmakers, Mayor for the City of Providence, Taveras. Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi and political reporter for Rhode Island Public Radio, Ian Donis. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Mayor. We know you're busy. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the budget. Obviously, $22 million budget shortfall, but the more pressing matter is, as you said in the open, the cash on hand situation. What is the plan? How is the city going to get through June when it is short $16 million in cash?
Well, Tim, as you said, I mean, we have some big issues in the city of Providence. We've gone from $110 million structural deficit to 22. It hasn't been easy over the last 11 months, but we still have a way to go. And in terms of getting through June, we're focusing on several things. We're obviously focusing on working with our tax exempts, and we just announced a deal with Johnson & Wales that is a tremendous help to the city. And it was special for the city in the sense of Johnson & Wales can actually go someplace else as well. They have campuses all around the country, so they actually could do that. They chose to stay here.
I'm just going to pull out a calculator as you answer this question. So at best, as we move along through your answer, if you got your way in the tax exempts, we're talking $7 million. Mm-hmm. Correct? Okay,
that's
so
right.
Now we're looking at, and that's a really rosy picture of getting all the money you want out of tax exempt. So now we're looking at $9 million short. So keep going.
Well, with respect to that, though, but we've already, speaking with Chancellor Bowen at Johnson & Wales, there's the possibility if we needed to accelerate the payment, we could do that, especially to address the cash flow problem. So we've talked with him about that. So while you're saying 7, it could be more than that. So we're focusing on that. We're also focusing, obviously, on doing everything that we can to cut any costs that we have between now and June. And the other component of that, we're also working with the General Assembly to identify what possibilities there might be of us getting some relief from some mandates, some other issues that would save us money in the short term. And the thing that's very important
Anything
here,
out of the General Assembly, would that realistically be a short-term fix?
Well,
those are long-term answers.
That's the key, but that's the key when you just said the short-term fix. And the key for us is this, you know, there are different things that we can do to get through this between now and June, but we should not borrow simply to get through it. If we're going to, if we need to borrow or do anything, it has to be part of a structural solution, and that is part of making sure our tax exempts are supported, making sure that we address the retiree issue, making sure that we're not going to find ourselves in the same position a year from now. So I'm being very careful as to how we address this issue to avoid exactly what you're suggesting, and that is to fix it once, but only to be followed next year by the same issue.
Isn't it likely, though, that, I mean, we're hearing from members of the City Council raising taxes are off the table. So a supplemental tax increase might be a problem for you, if that's where you, and I'm sure you don't want to go there, but if you have to, that might be a problem for you. Is it likely to deal with the shortfall by June, you're going to have to go through bonds, tax anticipation notes, or that you might have to not contribute to the pension plan in order to put a Band-Aid on the problem this year?
Well, with respect to tax anticipation notes, which basically is a payday loan, is the way I refer to it. It's basically you're waiting till you get your taxes into, then pay back that loan. That's not something I'm supportive of for a very big reason, because it is basically it's a cycle, and it's getting worse. The only way that I would be supportive of something like that is if it's part of a structural. If we've made the structural changes that we know that in the future our budget is going to be on a much better ground, and we need help to get through that time period. That's different than simply trying to get through that time period and pushing it off to the future. I'm not going to allow us to do that.
What about the pension contribution contributions. Could you be pulling the emergency brake on that for this year and not contribute?
Well, Tim, part of the reason we got into this situation is because that's been done in the past, and that the contribution has been an issue. The contribution is not made till October, which means that even if we were to do something like that, it does not affect your cash flow issue that we're looking for to June. So I don't want to see us make the system worse by doing something like that.
Mayor, the public safety retirees have shown no interest in accepting concessions for the 5% and 6% compounded COLAs that you say are keeping the city on an unsustainable fiscal track. Are you going to have to break union contracts to fix the city?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present our case on March 3rd to our retirees. We're going to streamline it live on the internet, so anyone who lives in Florida or wherever they might live, they can watch and see exactly where we are. And this is about making sure that we save our pension system, making sure that people have a pension. And in terms of the COLAs, and I call them really guaranteed raises because that's what they are, and particularly the 5% and 6% guaranteed raises that were promised in 1989, 1990, 1991, and they're still haunting us today. This is something we have to address. We will address it one way or another this year. We will address it.
Is the March 3rd meeting essentially a formality to show that you're making an effort? Do you really expect to get anything productive out of that?
Well, it's not a formality. I think it's important that everyone know exactly what's going on, and people understand that they need to be part of this. And they have choices that they can make. They certainly can choose to do nothing and see what the consequences are, and they don't have to look very far to see what can happen when you choose to do nothing. It's not just the raises, the guaranteed raises that were affected in Central Falls. They cut the actual pensions, and they cut a lot of them by more than half. So, you know, there are consequences to the actions, and we're going to make sure that people understand where we are, what we want to do, what the consequences are.
Mayor, I want to read you an email I got from a man who says he's a retired Providence firefighter. Here's what he had to say about you. Quote, "As far as I'm concerned, I'll see him in hell before I agree to any more loss of benefits." How could you, and then he went on to say, and we will never settle like the guys in Central Falls are. We'll fight them in court, we'll fight the bondholder law, we'll take the state down with them. How can you possibly expect someone to agree to concessions who feels that way?
Well, first, I don't plan on going to hell. So that's, I don't plan on seeing them. So that's the first thing. But with respect to that, you know what? That's what the courts are for. And if they want to challenge it, then go ahead and challenge it. And I would say to him that we have a nation of laws, and I've said before, and I think you've heard me say it, I said I follow court orders, even when I disagree. If I disagree, I appeal them, but we follow court orders, and we have a nation of laws.
And let me go with that then, because is it possible there are fates worse than bankruptcy for Providence? The more we're talking about it, the General Assembly could easily paper over this year's deficit, get you through the cash flow, get you into another fiscal year, and you could see in a situation happening where Providence becomes like Greece in Europe right now, where they keep giving you just enough so that you don't actually have to do anything as dramatic as default or file for bankruptcy, but you never actually solve the underlying problems, and you certainly can't focus on broader things. Is there a part of you that thinks maybe bankruptcy would be the best solution?
Well, let me just tell you that we can't continue to try to paper this over or do anything like that. The numbers here and what's going on is so, the problem is so big and enormous that we need to address it once and for all. It's unsustainable. We cannot continue this way. If we continue on the path that we're on, we're going to go from $59 million this year in terms of a pension payment to $98.7 million in 10 years, a 70% increase. That's not even talking about health care. That is simply the pension payment. You cannot continue that. So even if someone wanted to try to help us get through this, you're going to have to continue to help to make sure that to make sure that the city continues on. This is the time for change, and we can do this by everyone taking part in the sacrifice.
So if Speaker Fox comes to you and says, Mayor, we're gonna accelerate education funding or something so you have enough money to get through your cash flow problems, don't file for bankruptcy, what would you say to him?
Well, first of all, of course, we want to see the school funding formula accelerated, and we want to receive more help, but it should be part of a structural solution. And I've actually had this conversation with the leadership and with the governor as well, and saying that I'm working on making sure we have a structural solution. So if we end up having to do anything like a loan, like Tim talked about, that it is part of a structural solution, and people can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they know that this is not something we're going to continue doing. It is really part of solving the problem.
Mayor, I'm going to guess you're really sick of the question I'm about to ask you, but believe me when I tell you that the folks that we talk to when we're covering these stories, your constituents, this is top of mind. You don't like to assign blame in this whole crisis. I get that. Doesn't pay the bills moving forward. Let me put it to you this way. If an investment firm mishandles money for its clients and they face steep losses, they are investigated. That's it. No, that's what happens. Shouldn't that happen here? Don't we learn from history? Shouldn't we be taking a good look at what got us in this mess? Even if you don't like the blame game, don't taxpayers deserve that?
Well, I think part of what I'm doing with some of, we had a fiscal honesty tour and we talked about how we got here, including so many different components of that. When we talk on March 3rd with the pension, with our pensioners, we will talk again about how we got here. I mean, the thing about it, Tim, is that people want to focus on one thing. There are lots of reasons. We're talking going back to 1989, 1990, 1991.
The mayor who was mayor then is not a secret. He is a radio host who's on every afternoon. I mean, and then the person who followed him is a congressman. I mean, we're not talking about people these people we've never heard of.
Yeah, but the other aspects, first of all, 89, 90, 91. So you had several mayors.
That's true, Paolino.
And first of all, I started with the retirement board. That's a fact. Okay, so you know, we go into all this, and I'm not going to focus my energies on that, because you want to know what people are going to judge me on is whether or not I succeed, whether or not I'm able to solve the problem, and I want to make sure that I can do that. And when we do that, we can talk about lots of other things. But right now, I've got enough on my mind and enough to focus on in terms of trying to solve this problem that I'm not worried about, you know, who's to blame or anything else. Because the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of different issues.
But your fiscal honesty tour has not quenched their thirst on this, and this question just keeps coming up. And quite frankly, you're politely deflecting it every time you answer it. You know, is it not doing a service to your constituents to answer this question?
No, I think I have answered it, and what I'm saying to you is...
No, they don't have the answer.
Well,
they don't know a clear picture of what happened.
There are a lot of reasons why we're in this situation, starting back from 1989, 1990, 91, the failure to fund the pension system. We had issues in terms of also cuts that we received in state aid. We've had a downturn in the economy. We haven't made the decisions that needed to be made to avoid or lower some of our expenses. There are lots of reasons. I think what people want is like a very simple 10-second soundbite, and that's not something I can provide them.
We're getting up close to a break, Mayor, but I want to ask you, we're talking about the tax exempts. You've been very tough on Brown University, your administration has, and I haven't heard you talk a lot about the hospital's lifespan. You know, Partners Healthcare in Boston gives almost 5% of the amount they would owe in tax. Are you letting the hospitals off easy?
No, not at all, and I think that you make a really good point, Ted, and that is that this is really about tax exempts, and I think there has been a lot of focus on Brown, and the focus needs to be broader than that. And Brown has gotten some of the focus because they're the biggest tax-exempt institution that we have in the city, but not at all. As fact, as we're filming today, I'll be meeting with the hospital CEOs again. I've actually met with them individually. I'm meeting with them collectively today. So we're focused on all of the tax-exempt institutions.
What are they saying to you? We get a sense of what President Simmons of Brown has said. What have the hospital CEOs said to you?
Well, as you might imagine, I mean, the hospitals focus on the fact that they provide a lot of uncompensated care, that all the services that they provide to the community, and that they're a little bit different, they argue, than the universities, and I understand that. I've been involved with them before, so I understand that. But they need to be part of the solution. All of our taxpayers have a heavy burden that they carry, and now they're carrying a heavier one. Our workers have done the same. Everyone needs to be part of the solution, including our hospitals, and I expect that they will be part of it.
Mayor, have you talked with Governor Chafee about the possible appointment of a receiver in Providence, or the possibility that you might actually be appointed as a receiver in Providence?
I have not talked with him at all about the possible appointment of a receiver, and I want to do everything I can to avoid that happening.
All right, we're going to take a break on the program. Our guest this week is Providence Mayor Angel Taveras. We're going to keep talking about the budget crisis in the capital city. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi, and from Rhode Island Public Radio, Ian Donis. Our guest this week, Providence Mayor Angel Taveras. Mayor, as Ted pointed out, we hear a lot about Brown University, and he asked you about the hospitals. What about Providence College? We don't hear you talk about them much. What are your expectations from them?
Oh, well, we expect all of our colleges and universities and our hospitals to be part of this. And
what are they telling you, Providence College specifically?
I don't want to respond to that just yet. So we have met with Father Shanley, and I'll just say that we very much want and need everyone to be part of this.
And I didn't mention RISD either. I mean, there's another school. I mean, do you realistically expect money out of Providence College, out of RISD?
I expect that every one of our hospitals and our colleges and universities.
Hope and expect are different.
Well, no, I expect that in the end that everyone will contribute. And remember, RISD and Providence College already do contribute as well, as does Brown and also Johnson and Wales. So.
You know, I'm wondering if any of the hospitals and the colleges are feeling like they might just be throwing good money after bad. That I believe the mayor in 2003, Mayor Cicilline, said, look, we need your help, and they ponied up then.
Not only that, he said to fix a structural deficit. If you probably need us up, we'll fix the structural deficit.
Here we are again. Why should they keep just dumping money into the city when it's really a Band-Aid fix year after year?
Well, I think one of the most important things we've done, Tim, is really provide information to people, and we've invited them in and to open up our books and make sure that they understand what's going on. I think they've also seen what we've gone through in terms of reducing our workforce by over 200 people, in terms of closing our schools that we had to do, in terms of cutting our budget, doing the things that we need to do, and they understand that this is part of a broader structural fix, and this is part of it, a piece of it, obviously the tax exempts, and also the retirees need to be part of it as well. So I tell everyone all the time to judge me by my actions, and I think that our actions, I've been mayor now for a little bit over 13 months, and we've done everything possible to really make sure that the city survives, thrives, and succeeds.
Mayor, it would seem a strong case could be made for a prominent law firm to offer pro bono or deeply discounted representation to the city as it tries to stave off bankruptcy, but your administration is paying Hinckley, Allen and Snyder, the firm that employs Robert Flanders, almost $400 an hour. That is a discount from the firm's normal rate, but it's still an awful lot of money for a city that you have said is facing possible bankruptcy. Why weren't you able to negotiate a pro bono or much more deeply discounted deal?
Well, Ian, I think one of the things that you have to remember is we have a budget of over $600 million. We have an unfunded OPEB of $1.5 billion. We have an unfunded liability in our pension system of $800
So people know OPEB is the health care costs of
retirees. I'm sorry. And what I'm trying to say is these are complicated issues and difficult issues, and when you need expertise to be able to address it, sometimes obviously it may seem a lot, and I understand why it seems like a lot in terms of fees, but the issues are so big and they have such an impact on our city and on our state that you try to get the best people and the best expertise, and sometimes you have to pay for it and sometimes it's discounted, and that's what we're trying to do.
Does Justice Flanders think you can solve this outside of receivership and bankruptcy? Because he's a pretty formidable fellow and he couldn't do it in Central Falls.
Well, Justice Flanders is obviously a brilliant man and has done amazing things, not only as a lawyer, former Supreme Court judge in Central Falls. So we certainly are taking advantage of
what's he counseling you? What's he telling you to do?
Well, that's more private, but he's
ask Father Shanley to pray, maybe.
Let me just tell you that it's not an easy situation. If these solutions were easy, they would have been done long ago.
Disability pensions are often the most costly pensions for the city. They're compounded because they aren't taxed. Has there been discussion to adopt the type of disability pension system that others have implemented, including the U.S. military, where it's a sliding scale from totally and permanently disabled, that would be the largest check, on down, so the pension would reflect the injury?
Yeah. We are looking at a variety of things with respect to that. Just yesterday, we had the Commissioner of Public Safety testifying before a City Council committee on pension sustainability and the disability. And I mean, you've done reports on this, Tim. We obviously need reform in the system. There's no doubt about that. And this is part of what we need to do on a structural basis to address it. One, we need to make sure that people are actually injured and can't do their job. We need to make sure that they are still injured and cannot do their job. We need to make sure that the payments reflect the injury, as you said, and also that it's reasonable. And we need to make sure that on a long-term basis that we can actually sustain this type of situation. Someone's actually disabled and has been hurt on the job, can no longer do their job. I do think that we should obviously provide a disability benefit to them. I think the biggest issue is making sure there's a lot of gray area there. You may not be able to do that job, but you can do another job. And what about people who may be disabled, but they then go on and get a job outside of city government, and how that interaction. So we have a lot of work to do there.
Let me ask you about Councilman Sam Zurier. Did that incident make you shake your head when you read that in the Journal over the weekend?
I know Councilman Zurier. I think that he made a mistake on this, and he admitted it. He apologized for it, and I think that he wishes he could have that letter back. But I don't think he meant anything anything by that at all, or anything like nefarious with respect.
You told Ian on the radio this morning that you'd vote for Councilman Zurier in a second. Would you vote for Congressman Cicilline in a second?
Well, you know what? The congressman is I'm actually in the 2nd congressional district now, so it's on a different district.
But you're not in Councilman Zurier's ward either.
That's true.
Yeah, no, listen, I said before that I'd make a decision. I expect to support the congressman when he runs for Congress in re-election, and so we'll work together, because we really need a Democratic Congress, and that's very important, and I know he's committed to doing everything he can to help the city of Providence.
Providence desperately needs economic development. Moderate party leader Ken Block put out a statement this week saying the city could realize a lot more potential by attracting a big company to the land being made available by the relocation of I-195. Is he wrong about that?
Well, I think the 195 land is a wonderful opportunity for our city and for our state. I think the commission, great people on the commission, and they're doing a lot of work there to attract people here.
What about Ken Block's point that the emphasis seems to be on nonprofits, meds, and eds? Is he right that it would be better to have a for-profit company there?
Well, I think one of the most important things for people to know is that there's a process for anyone who is interested to really approach the commission, and there will be a process for this land is going to be up for anyone who's interested. So I think that we look to see who is interested and what makes the most sense, and I think it's going to be a mix.
In theory, though, do you believe that for-profit development would make more sense there and would have a bigger ripple effect?
Well, it depends, and let me tell you what I mean by that, Ian. I mean, we talk a lot about for-profit, and that's important, obviously, but I like the legislation that passed because it provides that tax exempts must pay taxes on the land. And the other aspect of that is that, Johnson & Wales investing in that district, Brown investing in the Knowledge District, that's really a long-term project. And when you think 100 years from now, we may not have some of the for-profit companies around. I'm pretty sure Brown will still be around. And so, you have to look at it from a standpoint of what's good in the long term. And so that's the way I look at it.
This week we aired a story about a teacher the city has been battling with for 6 years in a termination case. The teacher wins in court. Providence taxpayers will be on the hook. An estimated, could be $500,000, could be more. I know that your lawyers are battling this in court, so I'm not going to ask you specifically about Bernard McCrink. Stepping back, though, critics say teacher tenure was designed to give college professors the freedom to teach without fear of reprisal. They say in the public school setting, it has made getting rid of chronically underperforming teachers near impossible. What are your thoughts? Has teacher tenure in public schools worn out its welcome?
Well, I think that we're moving in the right direction now, and you've done a report in terms of how difficult it is to terminate, and I'm talking generally. You did one months ago
last year,
on the numbers, and it was striking that the numbers was just so low, and you compared it to different industries, and you realize it's so low. We need to have an evaluation system. We're now moving in that direction thanks to Race to the Top, the work of the commissioner, the work of the school board, and our superintendent. We need to have an evaluation system. We need to also, and I support the commissioner on this, move away from this idea that seniority is the sole determining factor. There's a rule on that now that it's no longer the sole determining factor. Teacher tenure, in my opinion, I understand some of the reasons for it, but I think the most important thing is that you have the most effective educator in the front of that classroom. That does not mean that you don't take into account how long someone's been teaching or anything else, but it should not simply be based on the fact that I've been teaching longer than you, and therefore I get the position.
Mayor, Providence's property taxes are very, very high compared to other places in the country, and we aren't Boston. We don't necessarily attract people as easily as a magnet place like that. When are we ever going to be able to perhaps think about lowering taxes? At the moment we're talking about maybe a supplemental.
Well, what we need to do in the city is structurally address this, and if we can start addressing our pensions, and we are going to do it, and I've said it before, we have to do it. We were going to do it one way or another this year. Either we'll do it because we either reach an agreement, or we'll do it because the court upholds what we've done, or we'll do it because the consequences are such that we have no other options. But when we do that, I think we can start addressing some of these issues. You're right, we need to attract business to our city. People look to see what type of taxes you have, and we've got to do a better job.
Mayor, we have about less than a minute left. You're a father now. I'm wondering, has becoming a dad changed your perspective on everything that's going on around you right now?
You know, becoming a dad is the most amazing thing, and it's changed my perspective in one way. I want my daughter to be proud of her father, and I want to make sure that when she looks back at this time, or her kids one day look back, they say her father, their grandfather did a really good job as mayor of the city of Providence and made a difference for the city and the state. So everything I do, I keep in mind that I want her to be very, very proud.
Do you ever sleep anymore, Mayor?
Every once in a while.
What do you think is going to be more difficult, negotiating with the unions or a toddler?
Oh, the toddler's way more difficult, no doubt about that. But she gets her way, so it doesn't matter.
All right, Mayor, thank you very much for joining us on the program. And it has been a busy week here at Eyewitness News, from mobster plea deals, of course, to the economic crisis, and even Joe Kennedy III threw his hat into the ring for Congress. If you missed any of it or you want to catch up, be sure to log on to our website, WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, Ian Donis, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.